resilience in the face of fear and anxiety. And I think definitely at the moment, a lot of us are requiring to dig deep and to find ways to be resilient for all sorts of reasons. I mean, there's so many different stories how this is affecting the world, the moment is affecting people. And I think this is why I want to have a conversation that is, it can be general when we talk about skills like this, but so helpful because we can apply resilience to all parts of our life, whether that be a personal challenge we have or a business challenge. Now, Christine, you've been working with body and mind therapies for the last 25 years. Very interesting therapies like structural integration and internal organ transformation, and then also working with biofield healing. So, could you want to just maybe talk to us, Christine, more about that?
Yes, sure. Oh gosh, where to start? I think my whole life I've been interested in healing, and the very beginning started for me when I was training as a rebirther, and that's when I first realized that my body had a completely different story from my mind. So that sort of started this ongoing curiosity with what's the truth that the body holds and how we can have such a discrepancy. And so that led me on this, all things that seem to go bypass, bypass the thinking and going for the intelligence of the body. And so this kind of work led me into somatic, a way of working somatically with people. I was also working as a yoga teacher. Yeah, and then this sort of whole journey led me through also my own recovering from anxiety myself, which I had was in a state of chronic anxiety after I separated from my children's father. And that was quite debilitating for me. And then, but that sort of suffering pushed me, I felt, through the eye of a needle and pushed me into coming to this quite profound spiritual understanding about the nature of the mind and the nature of basically our true nature. And through this experience, I found this really deep sense of peace. And it felt like the very core of my body unwound into the state of peace. And although I didn't really stay there, when anxiety crept back in, I knew where to look to kind of nip it in the bud and to really work with it. And then another part of this sort of puzzle for me, of where I became much more resilient with anxiety, and I'd say robust in the recovery from it, was when I started to understand the work of the nervous system, working with more like regulation skills with the nervous system. And I came to that work through working with my youngest son, who has severe chronic fatigue, and in trying to understand how to help him and researching that, I came across the understanding of the importance of the nervous system and the healthy nervous system regulation.
So you started working on quite a journey yourself with all of this. I think that's, in one way, a coach that actually has been through a lot of these issues themselves. It's, you can really hone in and understand, we can be empathetic to people, but if we have never gone through a journey of having had anxiety, I think every nuance of it, every corner, I'm sure, every nook and cranny, and are really able to help people with these issues. And then with your son as well, I mean, you have had quite a journey.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And the relationship between trauma and chronic illness and all these things all get intertwined. And but what I was going to come to really is, and when and I love what you said about coming through something like that myself gives quite a lot of a different kind of understanding from when it's just conceptual or and so that brings me to this point of right now, with everything that's going on in New Zealand. We just had tonight is a lockdown, and so that was announced yesterday, that everything was shutting down, no going out, all this whole lockdown thing, and it happened all very fast. And the reality was, I got in quite a lot of fear myself around it. I was feeling quite fine, and then all of a sudden it kind of hit me last night, and I felt a lot of fear came up, and it was fear around feeling isolated,
Mm.
um, and it was a visceral experience. It
And that's
wasn't
very
from
real though, I mean,
yeah,
and that's it, so many people, whether we are coaches or
mm,
therapists like we are ourselves, I mean, we still will, these are uncharted territories. We don't have any textbooks that we can
yeah,
look at really and see. So, I mean, we are all suffering, and fears like that
mm,
are coming up for us. I mean,
yes,
isolation is a huge thing as well, because we're social beings. We love connection. So it's great to be here talking to you like that, even tonight, about it's tonight for you, I know,
yeah.
because they're real issues.
Yeah, yeah, and it seems to be everywhere now. It's this worldwide phenomena. So, so this fear were I mean, I haven't felt fear like that I haven't had that experience for ages now, where it sort of it gathers momentum. I wasn't thinking. I know very well not to add to the story,
Yeah.
not to go into sort of the mind for it, but my body, the whole thing was kind of coming into this real fear, and this is where I think like resilience is often not what we think it is. It's actually the ability to recognize that and and be with it and go, okay, the fear, it's fear. So I always find labeling it is very helpful.
Mm.
It doesn't matter if you don't know what that feeling is, it doesn't really matter. You can just describe it as something like feels like pressure, feels like um, tightness, feels heaviness. Some kind of sensation language is all fine. Otherwise, like for me, it was like clearly this is like fear, and then it's locating it. Where is it in my body? And I could feel really in the core of my chest. So then it's going into it, going towards it, sort of from a bigger space, as though we are a bigger space that can, and the fear and whatever the feeling is, uh, arises in that bigger space, and we are the bigger space that arises in. So it feels like, okay, I feel it in my body, and I was going right into, I'm tracking it, I'm going right into the center of it, following it into the core, and really just allowing it. It's so easy that the setup is often to we want to get away from it, or we want to get stuck in the mind and try and strategize, and in these kind of times there's no way you can strategize yourself out of fear. You know, it's it's far better to see if you can tolerate it. See if you can tolerate it. And this is what they call, like, in I think Dan Siegel came up with this, where he calls it a window of tolerance.
Mm.
So if you can tolerate it, see if you can really just be with it, and breathe, or just keep your awareness in the body with it, and go into the center. I always say go into the center. It's like move into it and feel as though you can really embrace it, and just stay with this attitude of curiosity, like a challenge. I'm just going to see where this takes me, if I can just let go in it. The trick is to be able to do that without the story. See,
Yes. Yes.
without the story. So the mind wants to come in and go, oh, but what about this? And all the adding to it. Like, oh, and for me it was things like, oh, my kids. My fears were for my kids, also for myself, to be honest, and be completely honest about that.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
Can I just stop you there and ask you, so how do you advise people to stop the mind clatter, to stop going into
focus
story?
on the
Because we're
body.
not taught how to do that, how to go into story.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Really good question. Um, and I think it's one of the hardest part of it is
Mm.
to keep your awareness in the body. So that brings me back to this, what I was starting to say about the window of tolerance. And if you can be with the fear, you could say you're within your window of tolerance. If it's outside of your window of tolerance, it's very hard to be with it. So then you want to really focus on the body and you might have to focus on your breathing for a little bit. Or one of my favorite things to do that seems to work so well for myself and for it's a very many people find this very, very useful, is to feel the sensation of the body. So feel the weight of the body, feel where it's like, even as I'm sitting here now, I can feel my feet on the floor. I can feel the weight of my butt on the chair, the sensation of it. Any part of my body that's being supported, you feel it. And at the same time that you're feeling it, notice your breathing. And notice if you changed your breathing. You don't need to change it. You're just observing it. But you're doing the two things at the same time. You're feeling the body and you're noticing your breathing. It's something everyone could sort of, join in and do. It's so simple, you see. You don't even have to have your eyes closed. You can do that anywhere. And I'd encourage you to do it as often as you can. It works like a little stress valve. It's like one of those pressure cookers where the stress can, you're constantly doing little releases, letting it go. It's also helping to rewire the parts of the brain that are in communication with each other to let you know physiologically that you're safe. You're just here. We are just here, we're just here. Nothing is
becoming
happening.
present then, really present
Yeah.
in the moment
Yeah.
and grounded in the moment. And
Yeah.
I love that you talk about the physiological there, because that is what fear is really, isn't it? It's the instinctual. It just gets triggered into our basic sort of flight or freeze.
Yeah. So when I do that exercise, I notice a calming happens. Something settles, something feels a bit more calm. And if I'm very triggered, then it might take me 3 or 4 attempts to be able to settle into that simple exercise. Because it might, when you get a bit sort of triggered and you get into a little slightly panicky feeling or really revved up. Yeah. So I would just encourage anyone who's listening to just keep attempting to do it if that's the case, or simply notice your, focus on breathing for a little bit. But it's always good in that situation, we're bringing the awareness down into the body, because we can't do two things at once. We can't be in the thinking and in the feeling in the body.
Right. Say that again. We can't be in the thinking and in the body at the same time.
Yeah. Our awareness can't be in thinking and the body at the same time. You really
so we're embodying the thinking almost. Well, no, we're not. We're keeping the thinking. We're embodying what we're feeling.
Yeah. Well, actually, you're just bringing awareness to it. Just bring awareness to the sensation of the feeling, of the weight of it, and noticing the breathing. And if you do that with as much awareness and attention as you can, then it pulls that energy out of the mind where it wants to kind of gather up. Yeah, so that helps too. That helps you, could say, to settle enough that you can then allow yourself to feel the fear, because it's two different things, isn't it? So that will settle, and then you embrace the fear. See if you can be with it. It's often a challenge if you're not used to, because we instinctually move away from feelings that we don't like, that we
Absolutely.
don't. Yeah. We have often not so much of a capacity for certain feelings. So that helps to increase our capacity for them.
I love that, Christine. Really love it. I love the way you described it. I think that's why it's great to have so many different coaches on and therapists on, because everyone can describe something so much, different.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah. And it is practical, and
exactly, and that's what we want these days. Something that we can do on the ground when things are changing.
Yeah, and it sounds so simple, but if you really, if you really can do it, it's really the way through. because those feelings are going to be there. They're going to come. Like I would say it was like a wave. You know, there'll be days when you just feel like, oh no, we're doing okay. And that was myself the day before, saying, oh no, this is, you just go about doing what you need to do, and it feels very fine. And then it can just hit you.
Yeah,
Sort of sideswipe us,
absolutely. And so then I suppose, talking about resilience, that's a tool that allows us to lean into the emotions that are coming up.
Yeah.
Yes, be resilient to what's going on around us.
Well, to me, that is resilience. The resilience is not the resistance. It's actually, it's more the vulnerability, because
Mm,
that's us actually embracing more of ourselves and really fully embracing our humanity. And for those sort of sensitive empaths out there, these sort of, we have our own feeling, but we're also very easily going to hook into that collective fear, that the emotions of the people around us. So we can be this you can the strength of that is that you can hold that beautiful regulated space for someone else when you can. So the more regulated, and when I say that, I'm talking about the nervous system. So that would mean that in relationship to someone else, you still can do this. You can keep, if you feel yourself getting triggered into, someone else's fear, bring your awareness back to your own body. Feel the feeling, feel the sensation of the weight, of the support. Notice your breathing. So it'll just keep bringing you back, and it makes you, then you're a beautiful, clear kind of space for someone to resonate, and you're actually, you could say, you're lending someone else regulation.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's and like I was saying, the resilience to me really is in the ability to. I love the way you said lean in. That's quite a nice way of putting it. Leaning in, and leaning in to the nth degree.
Mm. That's the word I use a lot because I'm an emotional intelligence practitioner. I get people to lean into the emotion. It's almost like we're leaning forward, but it's just that, that
Yeah,
going in and being aware like that. But I love your tool to help us do that. And I loved what you said about resilience. It's that is the resilience, and it's being vulnerable to ourselves, to allow ourselves even go there. Because
mm,
really, I suppose we're not taught about emotions enough, as maybe especially my age group as well. It wouldn't have been something we would have ever gone into. Now I know these days children have it integrated into part of the school, but I don't think enough as well. Not everyone has it enough to allow, sit down, be quiet, don't mind that. If something happens around a school table, let's say, and one child might feel very anxious about it, but maybe
mm,
the classroom situation very busy, there isn't enough time, maybe the child has felt something and what they felt was overlooked. They might go home and their parents might be busy again, not meaning to not lead into whatever they were feeling. So I think that we can disassociate ourselves from our emotions in a lot of ways, and it's great to get a tool like this where we can lean in and actually be them.
yeah. And the other thing with it, sometimes the reason we get overwhelmed easily with some emotions is because we literally don't have the capacity for that in the body. So, for example, that would be, say, maybe fear, or maybe it's sadness.
Yeah,
It'll be some emotion that you had when you were little and it was overwhelming, it was too much. So then the body defenses come in, they lock down that part of the body. So this is sort of creates the posture and the pattern in the body. So these body defenses are like the tensions, etc. And they're usually very unconscious, just
yeah,
held there. So for example, that might be like sadness. I think of it like a slinky, one of those, those spirally things that the kids play
Oh,
with, that
yes,
they can compress. They're like a big spring. You can compress them or you can expand them.
yes.
So it would be like taking sadness, say, and compressing it and putting it in, say, the chest cavity.
Mm,
And then when it gets triggered, it can't expand into the body. It doesn't have a lot of room to move. So energetically, it goes up the brain stem, overwhelms the brain, and then you just feel teary, or in that overwhelm, sort of you can't think,
mm.
brain just kind of literally is overwhelmed.
I
And
love that
so
description.
yeah, so in those times, and this is, see, when it can be that you get into this overwhelm and you feel teary and you don't really know what the emotion is. It could be frustration or sadness or fear. It just feels like a pressure and general overwhelm, and often tears.
Yeah,
So then that's the time to, I would, bring the hands to support that part of the body. And it's though you're not supporting it to diminish it, you're supporting it to be there. We
mm,
somehow naturally do that, don't we? Because I think we innately know
yes, yeah, yeah.
how to that what we need. But um, yeah, so you just bring the hands to it, but have that intention that you're supporting it to be there. You're not trying to diminish it or make it go away.
Oh, Christine, I
Mm,
love that, absolutely. And
mm,
I find as well that oftentimes that sadness, which is, I find anger can often
mm,
come up as the protective wall to protect our sadnesses that we've held on to. I know that this has been my own journey, I've noticed as well, to get out of the pattern of.
mm.
So it's like, I just think anger can be so useful to work with as well, even though we call it negative, which no emotion really is negative, but like it's like as if it's like the firewall on the computer. It comes up to go, you're not going near my sadness. Um,
Yeah,
because as you say, we haven't got the capacity to let it out, and we get overwhelmed. So I love your description of it.
yeah. I mean, anger's great because it's a mobilizing force,
Yes,
but it just depends what we do with it.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's a whole other topic.
Oh, yeah. But really, I think it just struck me last night when I went into all of that, I have to apply this all to myself. And then I go, oh, yeah, that's because often the instinct is still not to want to do that. Still seems it seems counterintuitive to go towards it like that.
Yes,
But what
and
was
you're
the,
so honest saying that. I mean, and it's true, just because we are therapists doesn't mean we have it all, oh yes, everything is hunky dory and we can do all this. It can be a challenge at time to look at our own and lean into it.
yeah, and when you do that, really, it's just a thing that's flowing and moving, and
Yes.
um, it doesn't have any inherent meaning at all. No inherent meaning. It's just a movement.
Yeah, allow the flow
I
and
love I love the way of thinking, like, of emotion as if you took away the story, it's a sensation, isn't it? It's a sensation in the body. Yeah.
without
But
all those stories.
yeah, but this crazy sort of experience that we're all in together at the moment. This was the other thing I thought of resilience. So when in that fear state, we're very identified as this. You could say it's like the egoic state, which is very mind identified, which is inherently insecure, unstable, and instead, the moment I thought about our innate nature is resilient, and our innate nature is the space in which all that arises. So there's um there's always a spaciousness to that, and a stillness, and a peacefulness, but it can feel very much like a background, or you might not even be aware of it. But that's underneath everything, and everything happens within that. But we're not very attuned to even looking for that. We go straight into the other stuff, it's because it's much more compelling, and it's much louder. It's a real visceral experience. But so when I turn my attention more to what can I do for others? How can I help, others? Because that is our innate nature as well. And I found that immediately connected me with that much more empowered sense of resilience.
So you changed the story, really. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So it's always this a beautiful sort of like wave of experience, isn't it? Of letting yourself feel what you feel, staying connected to the body, because we don't want to get all up in the head. So it keeps us grounded and keeps us here, and gives us greater capacity to kind of regulate, and which means basically we don't get spiraled out into that sympathetic nervous system response into fight flight, and letting ourselves feel what we feel. It's really an amazing exercise in massive compassion and awareness. It's actually a very beautiful journey. And then it was sort of after that came this sort of thought, what if I, think about our innate, it's not really thinking about it, but it was more going, if I orient towards that rather than orienting towards the fear and the insecurity and the instability and the unknown, because that's a reality as well. When we're fully identified in that, we go into more of that. But the other space can contain all of that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to say that we have to allow all the feeling, all the experience, but then we don't want to go, we still want to be, there's a point where you're experiencing all of that inside that greater space, greater peace. Another way I find really practical to help people to get a sense of that is to imagine that there's a line down the side of the body. So if you're basically a line through the middle of your body, through the sagittal plane, which cuts the body, separates the front from the back. Imagine a line down there. And then bring your awareness behind that line. So even as I say that, I'm doing that, and it somehow it connects me with a sense of spaciousness, a little bit of a relaxed back.
Interesting. I haven't heard that before. So
yeah.
Christine, absolutely wonderful chatting to you this morning. Well, it's this morning here, and I know it's late for you over there. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Yes, well, I would love to, like this little exercise, I call it 3 simple steps to calm emotional overwhelm. Basically, they're those little steps that I just gave you. But if people would like that in a more, if they'd like that in a free guide, then I can just give you the link, Dolores, to
do that, please. And actually, I will include the link, because I'll put the recording of this on the same webpage that people could sign up. I'll put the recording there, and also I'll put a link to that, because I think that's a great resource to give people, and it's great. So thank you so much, Christine, for sharing with us.
I just had this thought, it's something that you could easily help kids with, and do it with kids as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. That's great. Thank you so much, Christine.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, love. Really nice to be here chatting with you.
First on our summit.